Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for a latest Chelsea news stream, because there's big days at Chelsea Football Club because we're trying to figure out who we're bloody being sold to. And that's not just a little bit of news, that's arguably the biggest news we can have at this football club. My apologies for no stream for the past few days. I was trying to do streams, and whenever I did, the graphics guy wasn't available. And then by the time I figured someone out, it was kind of old news. So I was like, okay, let me wait. But here we are to talk about things, because there is a lot to talk about. Obviously, the news keep piling upon themselves. On the hour, really, we hear something a little bit new. 3 days ago, we think something that's now basically completely proven wrong. It's now Saturday, the 26th of March. 8 days ago, we initially thought a shortlist would be decided upon. It seemed like it was decided upon yesterday, so a full week later than initially apparently intended. There was all sorts of reports about the Ricketts weren't even told whether they're on it or not. In the end, they were. No to Ricketts, by the way. Well, we'll get to, we'll get to that in more detail. We'll explain it in more detail in a little bit. But yeah, there's just lots going on. We'll try to dissect everything. We'll try to explain everything as well as we can, and obviously share our opinions. As you can see on screen, ladies and gentlemen, as Cranky Pen said, big up the panel. Appreciate everybody, all of you guys that have turned up. And also appreciate the chat. So get involved in the chat and let me know how you're doing. But let me start with you, Clutch. First of all, thank you for coming on, as always, mate. But how's the international break been treating you? Obviously, United States being, as much of a letdown as usual, really. But in terms of Chelsea, I'm not sure. I kind of keep flip-flopping between being a little bit worried and being absolutely fine, and then being a little bit worried and being absolutely fine. I'm sure Pys will be back in a second. I kind of flip-flopping back and forth. How do you feel about things, Clutch?
Well, as always, thank you for having me. It's been a weird international break, obviously. I mean, I haven't watched much football. I did watch the United States because, Pulisic, my guy. But other than that, me and the United States don't go too far. But no, I'm not really worried per se. I mean, I'm just kind of waiting to see what goes on. Because, I mean, there's so many rumors going on. Like they said in the chat, there's the Steve Ballmer, there's Boehly, there's many different names. And I've just been kind of biding my time. I've been less active on Twitter, just kind of watching, listening to the news, seeing what's going on. I'm trying not to, find this place where I overreact too much. Obviously, no to the Ricketts, because, I mean, there's just no place for that kind of hatred that they have expelled in the past. So for me, it's not something I want to be associated with as a fan of this club. But I'm just taking it a day at a time, It's just hoping that somebody will come in and they're going to show the same level of care and dedication that the previous owner did. But hey, there's also still that slight hope that he keeps owning the club because of things that he's doing. But for me, I'm just kind of taking it a day at a time, just waiting.
I hear that. It's a weird one. Me and my girlfriend have been talking about it, and it's there's a lot, obviously she is more pessimistic on the matter, and it's it can't be better. And I'm it might not be better. But personally, I'm will it really that drastically affect the things that we do compared to the last couple of years? I don't think so. Not obviously there could be a really bad one, but I'm gonna back who. Sorry, Jester's comment made me laugh because Austria also crashed out of the World Cup qualifiers. Cheers for that, Jester. Cheers, mate. I'm gonna trust the people in charge, whether it's the Raine group. They might trust less, obviously, but apparently Marina Granovskaya has part of the say in it. I know Pye's not a big fan of her, but even if you call her the right arm for Roman Abramovich, they are not going to just let us be sold to some random Donny who's going to completely screw us over. So for those bases, I'm quite positive, and I'm things are not going to be too drastically different. But that's just me. Charlie, how do you view that situation? Is that the kind of way you're looking at it, or are you sat there a little bit scared that, we could turn into Arsenal and fight for Europa League spots in a few years?
No, I don't think that's going to happen. I think, the club's is too big. It's in too strong a position to suddenly go from winning trophies pretty much every season to struggling to compete. I'd find that very hard to believe that would be the case, providing we're not taken over by the Ricketts. If we were taken over by them, then I could see that happening. But anyone other than them, I think the club will continue. It'll be different, but I think it could be different in a good way. I'm not saying it's going to be better necessarily, but I think it could be different in a good way. You know, the club moving to perhaps a more sustainable way of operating in terms of transfer market. You know, I potentially don't think, you know, we'll see the days of us spending 80, 90, 100 million pounds on a player anymore. I think we're going to have to be a lot more smarter in the market. I think we're going to have to scout a lot better. We might have to make changes in the recruitment department. I know the head scout is, well, quite honestly, shit, basically. Maybe some changes there. But no, mate, I'm not worried. I'm just kind of, you know, at the moment, there's just so much information coming out. I mean, I've got to be honest, I think it's an absolute mess. You know, like, I really do. You know, this is like, we're buying a huge sporting entity. Like, it's going to be the most expensive sporting club, you know, purchase in the world. And, you know, it's like The Apprentice. Like, it's ridiculous, like, how it's being handled. You know, you've got the groups of people that have submitted their bids, and then you've got the Turkish guy sending his bid to the wrong email, and then you've got, like, you know, some people have made it through, and then Nick Candy's trying to jump on every consortium possible to try and get in. It's, for me, mate, it's a mess, and it's a bit of a shambles, in all honesty. You know, I think, look, I understand that an individual can't really deal with it, but, you know, I think Raine have not dealt with this very well at all. You know, how can you, like, spend this long, you know, narrowing the candidates down? Then you've got a final shortlist of 5, and then it's like the next stage. How many go through to the next stage? And, like, surely, you know, you can, from the candidates, you can get down to like 3, and then you just pick one from that. So I'm not really sure why the process is kind of so drawn out, and why it seems to be, you know, kind of so public. And yeah, I just think it's a circus, mate. But in terms of the club, I'm not worried. The only case I'd be worried of, as I said, is if it turned out to be the Ricketts. But anyone else, I think the 3 other options at the moment, you know, obviously Todd Boehly for me is probably at the front of proceedings. I don't know too much about that the Martin guy. Don't know too much about him. Yeah, I mean, I know he's obviously very wealthy, and, like, I think a big plus to his bid was they've got, like, global investors from all over supporting it. And then the guy that owns the Celtics at the moment, he wouldn't be able to do anything potentially, because obviously he's got 55% stake in Atalanta. So it would be a conflict of interest if we were both in the Champions League. But yeah, it's a bit of a mess at the moment. So I guess until the next stage is announced, you know, it's all kind of just talk, really.
It is. And it does all feel a little bit like a circus. Like, it really does. It feels like just a reality TV show. That's what it feels like, especially when you compare it to other things that are like real problems that are going on in the world, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's literally what happened in Jeddah yesterday, obviously surrounding the Saudi Arabia GP, in F1. Obviously, I'm not trying to victimize Saudi Arabia by any means, obviously, you know, but I'm not going to get too political about things. But yeah, you know, don't bomb on the people, then they might not bomb you back, basically. But compared to those things going on, whatever is happening at Chelsea, like you say, it's just like I said, it's just a reality TV show. Like, what is going on? This Kim, whatever her name is, from Korea, obviously was part of Nick Candy's consortium. She had nothing better to do than basically do a Twitter Q&A all day, every day. Like, what is that? And then the second they get kicked out, she's like, yeah, we were told we should maybe look for another consortium. We might get involved there. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. Like, you are not, I don't know. It seems like bloody PewDiePie is trying to buy us. I mean, like, what is this social media presence that's going on? What is that? I don't understand. At the same time, Elon Musk is trying to one-on-one combat bloody Vladimir Putin. What the fuck is going on in the world these days? It's absolutely mad. It's absolutely mad. And Pies, you are usually, I'm not saying always, but usually probably the most pessimistic out of the lot of us. So now I'll ask you the similar question I've asked Charlie and Clutch. Are you also looking at this scenario in terms of who's going to buy us in a slightly negative way and more worried than positive? Or are you like, if it's that guy, we'll be fine? Whoever that guy
I mean, it's hard to say if it will be fine. I mean, we don't know really much about all the candidates on the shortlist. Obviously, we know, I think many fans are leaning towards Todd Boehly's group, just because I think it's quite a tight-knit consortium when you look at it, because Goldstein is literally just for the obviously the Stamford Bridge redevelopment by looks of it. That's his experience. Hans-Jörg Weiss, from what I know, is kind of a very quiet, doesn't want to get involved too much, and he's been long-time partners with Boehly, so you'd imagine he'd just be, there for kind of finances, a few little bits and bobs, and also like he's 86-year-old, so what realistically can an 86-year-old do with day-to-day running of Chelsea? Like, I'm not trying to be horrible, but he's an old guy, so yeah, I think if Todd Boehly gets in, I think it will be potentially a higher stake you'd expect than his LA Dodgers one, and I think it would be more focused towards Chelsea. And I think fans just want him really out of all the others because I think he's shown
If I
real
can interject and
intention.
add a question to that, do you think if it's Boehly, we could end up a little bit to be run a little bit like Liverpool are?
I mean, yeah, but I guess there's also a counter argument to that, and in terms of people who say that that's not a good thing. I mean, for me personally, obviously, a guy that we all know of, Daniel Finkelstein, like I was saying to you yesterday, Lawrence, he's worked with Liverpool's head of data, like not just Liverpool, like he's worked with a lot of data people in football, and I think with what Todd Boehly's old interviews were like, focus on data, smart signings, like you can't expect us to spend 80, 100 million on a player every summer. As much as it's fun for the fans, how many of them have worked out for us realistically? Like some of our best signings have been cheaper signings. So in terms of effectiveness, so there's that outlook on it as well. I'd just say that. And in terms of the other candidates and my overall view on it, I mean, everyone knows my view on the Ricketts, but the Sir Martin Broughton one again doesn't really make sense to me. Two investors that have got stakes in Crystal Palace, a guy in Lord Coe who has got political links to a Russian oligarch, which was discussed in government, which is a potential issue. And then you've got supposedly Stephen Pagliuca, I think his name is, who owns 55% of Atlanta, owns the Boston Celtics full time. So that, even if he gets rid of Atlanta, who's his focus going to be on, Boston or Chelsea? There's discussions and talks about Bain Capital as well. Are they dodgy private equity firm? There's a lot to discuss and a lot to think about. But for me, the only reason why I'm a bit worried and pessimistic is because you've got that clown at the top of the board, Bruce Buck, who is supposedly has a lot of say in this with Marina and a couple of other guys. I think Eugene Tenenbaum and David Barnard. So, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, I can't trust Bruce Buck for me personally. I'm not even sure about Marina. So that's why I'm a little bit pessimistic on it. And I think overall, Raine have handled this pretty poorly, in my opinion. Just the overall, I think they've handled it pretty poor.
I do see that. And I mean, we've spoken about the fact that their shortlist was yesterday, not announced as such, but it has kind of, come out and we kind of know who's on that. And it's seemingly 4 or 5 potential buyers on said shortlist. Obviously, we went through a few of those already in Ted Boehly, the Ricketts family, unfortunately. Martin Broughton, like Charlie mentioned, Stephen Pagliuca. If I read his name, I can remember it, or I can say it, but forgot what exactly it's spelled as. Let me just check it. Why not? Pagliuca. It's not that difficult, actually, Laurenz. Why are you struggling? But anyway, and supposedly a potential mystery bidder, according to the BBC. I was talking to Pice about this earlier, and it's like, usually the BBC are like probably the most reliable outlet for things in the UK. But that's because usually they don't get involved in rumor things, at least as far as I'm aware. Usually when BBC says things, they're factual. So I'm not really sure what to make of that, who that mystery bidder is. Obviously, it's less so a rumor that it's him, but it's more like people just, that's who they want, like Stephen Barmo, the guy who owns the LA Clippers. And he's absolutely ginormously wealthy. Obviously, GSA25 saying Elon Musk, get involved. I mean, he just opened a new Tesla factory in Berlin, so it's already getting started in Europe, so why not? I mean, we're already halfway there, I guess. He's getting closer to Russia if he wants to fight Putin, so, everything just perfect. But no, nobody knows. A couple of other things I will say in terms of, because I brought it up in terms of the question about Liverpool, like, if you don't have like a owner like Man City, maybe like PSG, or if you want like we used to have, then kind of what Liverpool do is probably the best you're going to get, really. Because every now and again, they do spend big. They just spend, 60-odd million for Luis Diaz in the January window. They signed Van Dijk and Alisson in the same window a few years ago. Or was it the same window? I can't remember. But they signed both of them for big money, right? but then they also like add with like Diogo Jotas or Firminos, those kind of players, which are good and just good scouting, but they do a good job. But when they need to spend big, they will spend big. And if that's what we can get to, I wouldn't mind that too much, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. Like, obviously, it's nicer if we spend all the big money, but was it Charlie or Pice? One of you guys said, in terms of our big money signings aren't usually the ones that come off the best anyway. Like, it's the Kantes, the Hazards, the Mendy's, the Azpilicuetas that we really like cherish. Obviously, we've made a few big transfers over the last few years, whether it's Ben Chilwell, whether it's Kai Havertz, theoretically still Christian Pulisic. Those could still turn out to be phenomenal signings over the years. I mean, Ben Chilwell in a way already has, obviously, unfortunately injured at the moment. Kai Havertz has had a wonderful 2022 so far, at least, or once he got the chance, starting from the first game or the first day against Lille. He's had a good spell. He could be phenomenal. So we could then talk about also big money signings that worked out well. But in terms of strikers, whether it's Lukaku, Morata, Torres, Werner, Shevchenko, Crespo, all of these big signings, none of them have worked out. The only one that did was Diego Costa and Didier Drogba. Obviously, Didier Drogba back then was expensive, but compared to now in terms of what the money is, it was great. But do you know what I mean? Ridwan said here, okay, where was Liverpool before Klopp? That is true. I'm not 100% sure how long they've had the same owners for, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. So I don't know if there's an explanation for that, because I'm sure they haven't had the same owners forever. But what else did I want to say? So yeah, what I'm trying to get with that is, you don't always need to go big signings, but when you do, just make sure they're right. And that's kind of the big thing we need to make sure of. And obviously we've discussed this in terms of transfer rumors plenty of times over the last few months, that the decision making at Chelsea needs to be good and the scouting at Chelsea needs to be good. And someone said a great thing, I think it was Liam Toomey on Twitter the other day, and he said the most important thing for any owner that could be a new owner is less so the money they have, because even if it's Steve Ballmer, he's not going to put all of his 97 odd billion into the club, is he? Roman Abramovich didn't put all his 13 billion into the club. Do you know what I mean? That's not really what it's about. What's important about whether you're a good or a bad owner is knowing what you're not good at and then hiring people who are good at that to make sure everything's run well. That's what we need. That's essentially what you want. New owner since 2009, I think, for Liverpool. Well, took them a while to get going, but obviously they, in 2009, were in a very different position to where we were. But obviously Liverpool didn't do everything right. Now they're doing things right, but hopefully we can just start doing things right from the get-go, I suppose. Let's just get the whole Ricketts conversation out of the way, because I don't really even want to give them too much time, if I'm honest. But, must be discussed at least briefly. Now, first of all, absolutely not happening. Personally, I've tweeted my no to Ricketts and I've gotten involved the way I have, but I've not gone overboard with it, not because I don't care, but because I just don't think it's going to happen. Maybe that's naive of me. We will see in the next few weeks, I guess, but I just don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, there might be some sort of connection between Raine and the Ricketts itself, which in my opinion, shouldn't that exclude them from the whole thing in the first place? If there was a previously existing relationship. That's a different debate, I guess. But I just don't think it's going to happen. Because the whole thing isn't decided by Raine, but a Raine group who obviously Roman Abramovich put in charge of being in charge of the whole sale of the club, who's an American bank, in case people didn't know that. It's not them who have necessarily defined the final decision. It's more like them kind of giving advice in terms of who's the best potential owner on a financial basis, right? Because that's what they do. They're a bank. That's what they're good at. But they're not going to be the deciding people. And then I don't think, we just had protests. I mean, hopefully we'll do another protest if things get as far as they, could. But the Chelsea just learned what protests feel like. They're not going to want to do that again. So they're not going to want another situation where everyone just hates whoever could be involved. So that's why I don't think it's going to be the Ricketts. But obviously, in every sense of the word, we don't want them. Pice, do you just want to elaborate just quickly why exactly we really don't want them? And then I'll give it to Clutch and Charlie if they want to say a second on that as well before we move on.
Well, yeah, I keep saying there's two sides to it. Obviously, first off, people say, oh, it's just Tom Ricketts bidding. The detail has been the Ricketts family. Yes, Tom Ricketts is heading the bid, and he's not been involved in such controversy. but he's still hated by the Cubs fans. Like I saw something the other day, which I went back to. Just 2 years ago, they launched a system, basically like a streaming service, where you had to in order to watch the Cubs games, you had to pay for this service. And he did like a live announcement. I think they streamed 17 of 21 matches on there. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen at Chelsea or whatever along the lines of that, but they had a live like announcement with hundreds of fans, and they all booed him. They all booed him when he put up this idea. And yeah, I've just been speaking to so many Cubs fans, really, in terms of sporting element, like how's it run, and they all say pretty bad things. The only good time they can remember is when they won the World Series in 2016, and then after that, one of them said to me, "Well, basically they just got really stingy. Players obviously wanted to be paid more, which is, perfect enough. We've had a similar situation. We won the Champions League, and players obviously want to get paid more. People like Rudiger, and apparently the Ricketts just said no. Like, no, we're not. You can go if you don't want to be a part of this. And they're really stingy on contracts, and also they just didn't build on that ambition when they won this World Series. And ever since then, from what I'm being told by all these people, is that they've just been kind of just been like average ever since they won that World Series. And it's annoying because they can do so much more, they feel, but the Ricketts, they just don't feel have got that ambition to take them to the next level, which is
But I
not a
would
good
also
sign.
say it's baseball. Who gives a shit? Sorry, go on.
To us, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, no, I'm joking.
like this is their pride and joy, like to them. I mean, or supposedly they spent like $800 million on the stadium and things like that, and there's just a whole load of complaints, stuff like ticket prices. Apparently, they up those every year. Like, there's so many little details that they do supposedly that it's just fucked. Um, so yeah, and then obviously there's the human element of it, like Todd Ricketts calling COVID Kung Flu. I mean, Joe Ricketts being racist towards Muslims. There's so many others. Like I mentioned on other stream the other day, like CFC did like a 10 incidents thread from all their family, and they're just like, I just don't want that family and that tag to be aligned with Chelsea. And that's kind of what the Chelsea Supporters Trust said as well, and like a couple of others. I think the head of Chicago, like their views don't align with Chelsea's true values. So when you've got other people in the race that have less controversy and are arguably better owners, from what we understand, why would you even go with them? Why are they even in the running? And also, finally, like Tom Ricketts saying the door's still open, like I just like the ignorance of these guys, man. Honestly, like just do yourselves a favor. Like, nobody wants you. It will get to a point of a protest. I already know there's talks going on about a protest, so it will get to that point because people just don't want these guys, and rightly so. It's not just because they're terrible owners; they're just not good human beings either. We don't want that tag aligned with us, in my opinion.
No, we don't. Obviously, and I'm not saying Matt Law is doing that necessarily, even though he was the one that confirmed the Ricketts stuff. Raine Group haven't personally confirmed anything about who's on the shortlist. Potential is still out there that they're not actually, but they're just claiming that because they don't want to look like mugs. Who knows? I'm not saying that's the case. I'm saying theoretically that could be the case. But like Pice said, like we just don't want to get involved with that. I mean, obviously, Jess asked there, what are Chelsea values? I see that question. Like we had Roman Abramovich.
LGBTQ, no to racism, all the different campaigns we have.
100%, 100%. But obviously, Roman Abramovich, what's going on in Palestine. Like, do you know what I mean? And we still had the no to racism stuff going on. So it's like, in the public eye, that can still happen while you have to. I'm not saying I want the Ricketts by any means. I'm saying, now we care. We didn't care for Roman. Obviously, we're also put in a position where we've learned why we need to care because Roman was now forced out of it. So that's why all of us.
And also, Laurenz,
on that.
Also, Roman Abramovich was already in charge like for so many years. Like, this was never really covered in as much detail as it was until he got sanctioned. So like
the Palestine stuff was out.
Yeah, of course. But like, when was that covered? Really, sort of. What was it? A couple years ago? A year ago?
I wasn't even covered. I was just told by a mate who knows more about it than
it wasn't like
media is reporting. Yeah.
And to be honest with you, like I saw loads of people were like, fuck Abramovich on a personal level. Thanks for the investment, but I don't really like him on a personal level, and that's fair enough. But we ain't going to be like, it's what I mean. We ain't just going to be able to kick Abramovich out of a club. It's harder to kick someone out of the club than to stop them coming in. And this is why it's like, we're trying to do as much as possible, because if the Ricketts get in, we could be fucked. You know what I mean? Like, we ain't going to be able to get these guys out. You don't just sign an owner comes in, they leave in 2 years. It's not happening. The next owner's here for 5-10 years at minimum.
At least.
Yeah, so it's like you have to make this right. You have to delve into everyone. That's why I'm like, I don't trust Chelsea. I don't trust Bruce Buck. I don't trust Raine. It's just, for me, it's all about money. It's not about the future.
But
know what I mean?
Because obviously Roman doesn't get any money directly, right? Obviously there could be money exchanged behind the scenes for theoretically, Ricketts paying Buck, theoretically Marina, even though I think it's much less likely with Marina, because if she needs money, well, Roman can give her some. Do you know what I mean? Like, if shit really hits the fan for her personally. But Bruce Buck doesn't have the decision making by himself. And Bruce Buck is also an old man that already has a lot of money. So that, like I said, I'm not too worried about the Ricketts actually getting it, but let's make sure they don't. Clutch, anything you want to add in terms of the Ricketts? Because we don't want to get involved with them, do we?
No, I mean, I think it's just, like you said, I mean, we have Muslim players, we have LGBTQ players on the women's team. We just don't want to get involved in that kind of thing. It's just, we have a team that's united. We don't need to have somebody who comes in and just isn't part of like basic human decency. So for me, it's a no. Like, there's just no room for that kind of hatred in the world anymore. And I feel like anybody who does that, they don't need to be involved. Especially with things that I care about. I do go out that a little bit more. I mean, I understand everybody has their own personal values, but it's just not something I want this club to be involved in.
Understandable, mate. Absolutely understandable. Charlie, similar question to you. Obviously, if there's anything you want to add to the whole Ricketts situation.
Well, it just can't happen. Simple as that. And as Pi said, it's so important that as fans that we take a stand. We've seen, excuse me, through the Super League protests that actually the fans have got a lot of power, and we do have a big say in these things. So, and it's a lot harder, as Pi said, to get someone out once they're in. Once they're in, they're in. Look how hard United are trying to get rid of the Glazers. Arsenal trying to get the Cronkies out. Mate, this is hard to do. You're talking years and years and years.
It's easier to stop now than it is once to hit.
Exactly. It just can't even happen. I agree with what you said as well. Like, with the Raine group and the Ricketts having like a bit of a personal relationship. That's a massive conflict of interests. Should they even be in the running at all for the club? And the fact that you see all the online campaign, and then they come out, they put their ridiculous statement out, "Oh, the door's still open." There's not a single Chelsea fan that wants the wants the Ricketts family anywhere near the club. Not just because of their human values and their and their principles, etc., and the things that they've said. We've got a big contingency of Muslim players at the club. That's not going to go down well. It's the fact that also the way they actually run their existing sports club that they own is awful. They don't care. They're not bothered at all. They don't invest in it. They're not bothered where they finish. As Pi said, I've seen that clip. The guy's getting booed when he's doing an announcement of something. They're just not likable. So, we've just got to make sure we don't.
In America, and I mean,
and that's in America as well.
This is not. I'm not saying that should happen, but how Americans are usually viewed in the UK. So Americans are already looked at with a bit of like, are you trying to screw us over here? Now imagine that then it's an extra unlikable American. We don't want to get involved with that.
Yeah, no, we got to do everything we can to stop it. So like I said, like if it's protests, then we need to get that sorted. But I mean, you can't fully rule it out. But I'd be shocked if they got anywhere near like owning the club, or they got to the next stage or whatever it is. I mean, because it would be an absolute uproar. There'd be riots if they got anywhere near the club.
Exactly. Just lastly, because Tobogo, so hopefully I didn't butcher your name, mate, but you put that question in earlier, and I thought I'd wait until we're done kind of discussing. No, Chester, that's not what I meant. Anti-American sentiment is not okay. I'm just saying it is unfortunately, to some extent, a matter of fact in the UK. Not necessarily always we actually dislike an American individual. It's more like this American big, like Americans as a whole. But that's not just a UK thing, if I'm honest. That's kind of all over Europe. Americans are kind of viewed as clowns a little bit, as a whole, not as individuals, not like Clutch or you, Jester, or individual. I mean, Trump as an individual, but mostly.
Wait a minute. People didn't know that Americans are
Well,
viewed
I don't
that way
know.
over? I know that.
Like,
I know
just-
how Americans are viewed over there. It's
No,
not
but
that bad.
it's not even like we don't like Americans. It's matter of fact, the American owners, I mean, even Liverpool to an extent, they don't like FSG most of all. Like they kind of flip flop on them. Arsenal and United hate their owners, so why
But there
the fuck
was
would
also Chelsea fans which didn't like Roman, I will say.
Yeah, but like, I mean,
probably,
what?
they
But
exist.
if an American owner comes into Chelsea, there is going to be that element of awe. Like, shit, look at the other American owners. Like,
Yeah,
it's just a
no,
matter
for
of
sure.
fact. Like, if fucking Glazers were unreal owners, people were like, bloody hell, let's get an American in. Look at what Glazers have done, but they're not. So, like, I don't know how you can argue with that.
Yeah, no, exactly. But let me quickly ask all of you three that question by Tibogo. If the Ricketts were to end up being the ones that buy Chelsea, how will you feel as a fan? Will you stop supporting the club? Will you, like, what will you do? Like, obviously, this is the worst case scenario. None of us want this to happen. But after this, I'll be done with talking about the Ricketts. But let's say it does happen. What do you do, Charlie? Let me start with you.
Might cry. Nah, look. If it happens, I'll be gutted. You'd be angry. It would go against everything. Human values on a personal level. It would go against the club values, all the campaigns that we're a part of, and that we promote, all the stuff we do in the local community, all that sort of thing. But I would never ever change my team. There's certain things in life that you can change, but one thing you can't change. You can never change the team you support. And would some fans leave? Yeah, they probably would. But it's the sort of fans who don't want support in the club anyway. So, yeah, I mean, I'd be gutted. I don't know what it would be. Like, I don't really want to think about it too much, to be honest, because it's worst case scenario, and it simply is one of those things that it just can't happen. It just can't happen. I think there'd just be a very bad atmosphere around the club for quite a long time. And it's in such a great place at the moment, on the pitch, the unity with Tuchel, the playing squad, etc. Everything seems to be going really well. And I feel this would just be a massive step back and we just undo so much work that's been done since he come in. So, yeah, I'd be devastated if it happens, but I just can't see it happening. I don't know if it's naive, like you said, or if it's just, I don't know, but I just can't see it happening. There's just no way.
Is there, because for me, like someone said, obviously, the saying is you can change your wife, but you can't change your football club. And it's true, but obviously there's two different ways. There's one way, theoretically, you stop being a Chelsea fan, you support someone else, or you just stop supporting a football club. I'm not sure I'd go that far, but it would certainly be a bit of a, even if subconscious, it would certainly be some sort of detachment from the club because you just don't want to be as attached subconsciously, I think. So that's why I wouldn't be surprised for a lot of us. I'm not saying all of us, and I don't know if that will actually be how it goes, but I wouldn't be surprised if it were to be the Ricketts to get it. That over years, I would just care less and less. And not because I love the club any less, but if certain things at the top go the wrong way, I feel like that would just be a natural thing if you really don't want to identify with that anymore. And obviously, it's always like the club isn't the owners, and in big club cases in England, that certainly is the case when the owners are from abroad, 100%. But it's still just it's a rough one, Clutch. How do you see that? If it were the Ricketts, how would you react, or how do you think you would react? Because probably I don't think any of us really know for sure how we would react, if I'm honest.
No, that's spot on, because I mean, even at this point, I cannot see a scenario where that happens. Maybe that's why they're trying so hard to get this PR thing going through, because they do have a legitimate chance of buying the club. But I don't know. It's hard because I don't know until it happens. That's just kind of the person I am. I don't know how I would deal with the situation until it happens. I could say, hey, this this is the situation, but I don't know how I would act in that situation. A lot of people say, oh, if that was me, I would have done this. It's like, you never really know until you're in that situation, because things like that don't tend to have the ability to kind of plan for it in a way. You just kind of got to react to it, and reacting is something a lot different. Some people don't react as well to other people. It's just, I don't really know. Would I support another team? No. Because I mean, I just don't really like any other teams. So, I mean, if Chelsea's not on, I don't generally watch football. Sometimes if there's a player who's involved who might transfer to Chelsea, I will probably watch, but I don't watch too much other than Chelsea. So, would I actually support another team? No. But would I stop supporting Chelsea?
To those people that we now absolutely hate that watch no football other than when World Cup and Euros is on. And I hate those people. I'm like, either you care or you don't. But who knows? Maybe that's what we'd end up like. Sorry, go on, mate.
No, I mean, that was pretty much the end of my sentiment.
Fair dues. Pice, same question as to the boys. How would you react?
Well, I mean, I'd just be fuming. I'd imagine there would be protests, even if there's not going to be already. And I think I'd just have an emotional attachment to players, and just the club name itself, I guess. And Tuchel, if it's still here for however many years, I've been going to games since I was like 10, so I'm never gonna stop supporting the club as such. It would just be kind of what you said, Laurenz. I think over the years, even months, you'd kind of just start slowly fading away from it, but not fully. If you're like, it's hard to, because right now, like, I love Chelsea, I love Tuchel. I don't like the above structure, but I loved Roman for what he's done. So yeah, I mean, as you said, things are going great right now. But if the Ricketts came in, especially knowing like someone like Todd Boehly, who's really wanted the club, who also, again, I just keep saying, none of these owners come with guarantees. Like, I was expecting a much better shortlist, but he's like the worst of the worst options. I mean, the best of the worst options. So, and I actually do like his interviews. And I'm kind of I'm kind of interested about him. The others I'm not. So I'm just like, well, yeah, I'd just not be happy. I'd become slowly detached, I think, but not fully. Like, I can never fully give up on Chelsea. So I kind of agree with all of the things you guys said. It's hard to really know until you kind of get to that situation, I guess.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. But enough of that negative talk. Let's talk about more positive things, even if we don't know in detail. Because, like I said, the BBC have reported there is a mystery bidder on this shortlist. We don't know who that is. Pice, is there even rumors who that is? Or is it just complete guesswork?
Now, see, I think it's who I tweeted the other day, because Sky News or BBC Sport, sorry, said there's a mystery bidder, but in the article it said it's a party, so it's not an individual. And Sky News reported the other day, again, the Mark Kleiman guy said about Steve Pagliuca has submitted a bid, and then he said there was another party called Empowerment IP, I think. Their offer was 1 billion straight up cash and 2.1 billion set aside for stadium and player transfers and things like that. It was a bit of a different offer to the rest. Now I'm just wondering if it's those, just based off because he came out with Stephen's name again and now he's shortlisted. I'm wondering if it's those people.
Could be, theoretically. I guess
Yeah.
It could be. I mean, that is interesting that you said it's a party rather than an individual, which rules out like someone like Steve Ballmer. But it's just we just don't know. But I will say a lot of us did always say, well, the whole piece of news always came out. That is true, actually. A party in that sense could theoretically also be an individual in this context when you don't know who it is, in terms of how it's like when you call someone they them rather than he she. In that context, you could theoretically do that, but it could still be a party though. Like, it might not, but it could still be. And it's just that we don't know. But it was always like, obviously now it seems like Boehly is all of our favorite. I still would also say that he is the favorite overall, like to actually get it. But I did always say for weeks when all this stuff came out, I mean, initially, first thing I tweeted when Hans-Jörg Wyss gave this interview, I'm like, well, that ain't happening. Because to me, it was just very clear that people that are going to be that public about it, it's just ain't going to happen. Obviously, the Ricketts have become public later down the line, but it's still dodgy. I said what I said about the Koreans, or about the Koreans that were backing Nick Candy, or Nick Candy himself, how public that was just never taken any seriously. Obviously, Hans-Jörg Wyss is still involved in this consortium with Todd Boehly, but Todd Boehly is kind of the main guy, right? The face of it, the front of it. So whatever some 86-year-old says, maybe that still works, but I always thought that the biggest likelihood, like you don't just spend 2.53 billion of any currency. Well, obviously, probably more easy to do it with Japanese yen, but dollars, pounds, euros, whatever. You're not just going to spend that if you're not serious. And I feel like the most serious is always when you don't talk. Like what? Like how have you gotten that rich by waffling? But then I say that Elon Musk is, at least officially, the richest man in the world, and he loves a good waffle. So who am I to talk, really? It's a difficult one. I mean, obviously, Charlie Clutch, we know that we don't know who the mystery bidder is, but how do you view that? I'll start with you, Clutch. How do you view a mystery bidder? Is that something that you're kind of hopeful for, or is that more of a, like, well, if we still don't know their name now, you won't even take them seriously. Ladies and gentlemen, by the way, first of all, big up to Bogo for constantly asking people to smash the like button for me right now. Just one click of a button. Doesn't cost you any money. Barely cost you any time. Go down below, hit the like button for me. It really helps me. And subscribe. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers, so hit the subscribe button for me. But Clutch, mystery bidder. What do you do with that for the time? Well, we don't even have much of an inkling. Obviously, Pye said what he said, but that could be true. It could not be true. So we still don't really know, I guess.
I feel like the general rule of life is the known is better than the unknown. So, I mean, it's honestly a 50-50. It could be somebody really good who doesn't talk, just wants to put money into it, wants to invest. But you never know. I mean, people can say things and they can come out to be true. Like Todd Boehly is saying all the right things. He's doing good interviews that show that he's about winning and that's what he wants to do. But at the same time,
let me just for people that don't know, we're not talking about interviews he's giving necessarily right now, which could then be twisted as he's just saying that as PR, just like the Ricketts are saying things, just like Nick Candy was saying things. But he said those in the past, not necessarily to do with right now. So that's why you can take his word for it a little bit more in 2019, like Pice just said, rather than right now. Just to clarify, obviously, I know you know that, Clutch, but just maybe some people didn't. Go on.
Yeah, no, of course. But yeah, the unknown is way scarier than the known to me. And I think at this moment, it would have to be somebody insanely invested for me to change my mind. Because, I mean, I don't know. And for me, I'm just going to take the best of the known, I guess. So I'm still going for Boehly, but who knows? It could turn out to be much better. We don't know.
Very true. Very true. Charlie, similar thoughts or different kind of opinion on the mystery bidder thing?
I don't know. Like, I agree with you. I always think that, like, if you're conducting serious business at a price like this, between 2.5, 3 billion, like the most, the better business people operate in silence and then only speak when there's something to say. But then having got this far down the process, to have remained completely anonymous and actually be like a serious contender, I'm not sure if they are, whoever this person is. It could go one of two ways. It could be someone unbelievable, or it could be someone shit that's kept quiet and kind of flukes their way to this stage and they don't want to reveal themselves. I don't know, but I mean, as Clutch, and I think it's better to go with like what we know rather than speculating on, it could be X, Y, Z person. I think what we've got at the moment is obviously, the shortlist, and Boehly's that consortium is probably the best placed out of the options we've got at the moment. So I'd say they'd be the heavy favourites, but if this mystery bidder turns out to be decent, then I mean they could jump the queue. But yeah, I'm not paying too much attention to it until we get concrete announcement of who it actually is.
There you go. No, I do agree. I will make one slightly crazy claim or throw some crazy idea out there. I put it in our group chat yesterday as well. I'm like, with everything going on, and obviously if people aren't aware, so the US, the United States have decided against sanctioning Roman Abramovich on the word of Vladimir Zelensky, obviously the president of Ukraine, because he said that Roman Abramovich has been part of trying to negotiate or start or be part of peace talks between Ukraine and Russia. That has since also been confirmed by Russia, by the Kremlin, that he is involved in that. Obviously, people took that immediately as like, look, Putin is allowing this. So obviously, if he's involved in negotiations, Putin has some sort of no side, whether it's a Russian guy like Roman Abramovich or some random NATO donny that turns up, no guy will be involved in these peace talks if either Zelensky or Putin don't agree to it. Because otherwise, they would just call off the peace talks, right? So, let's not take that too far. But because the Americans decided not to sanction him and sanction Roman, and there has been minor talks that as soon as, peace, recommences, is that the right word? Between Russia and Ukraine, hopefully right now, ideally, but hopefully as soon as possible, at least, if UK government lift sanctions as soon as that happens, who the flip knows whether he might not just change his mind and be like, actually, flip the lawyers, I'm going to sue the British government and I'm going to keep it and we're going to buy Haaland and Dembele and everyone. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying that will happen, but I'm saying until we don't have confirmation that some new Donny has bought the club, you can never rule out that tiny, tiny possibility of that happening. There is a chance. I mean, I'm not sure whether that's true. I'm just going to take your word for it. Just apparently Roman Abramovich is in Poland with Joe Biden right now. I'm not sure why Joe Biden's getting involved, because if you want peace and it's to do with Russia, don't get the Americans involved just because Putin hates them, right? So just for that logic, not really that smart, but hey, they know are much more intelligent people than I am. Matt Law, new article. Do you want me to send so we can go through it? Yes, please do that, mate. If it's relevant. Obviously, I haven't seen it yet.
On Twitter or somewhere else?
Wherever you want, really. Wherever you want. I'll figure it out wherever you send it to me. What I will share in the meantime, before we get to the article, is that tweet you said earlier with a few bullet points of what's actually happening now. So now that we have a shortlist, what is supposedly going to happen to only the people in the shortlist is that Raine, obviously the Raine Group, the bank, who's in charge of this sale, is going to assess these factors. Let me zoom in a bit so it's bigger for everyone. The level of equity and debt funding is going to be checked, basically. Price of bid, which I think is weird, because how did you get to a shortlist if they didn't check the price of bid first? But hey, here we are. Future investment and commitments. Obviously, there was a report, I think, made by Sky that everyone has to make committing or binding commitments in terms of using at least £1 billion for a potential new stadium and the squad. That's obviously a minimum. Doesn't mean they are not allowed to spend more. Obviously, they could spend more. But that's apparently whoever it will be, that will be somewhere written. They have to at least do that. Speed and certainty of execution in terms of how quickly can we get the sale done, because obviously that's part of what we need to do, especially with our contract situation in terms of Antonio Rudiger, Azpilicueta, obviously less so Christensen, because it's pretty much done that he's going to go to Barcelona. But in particular, Antonio Rudiger, and also to some extent Azpilicueta, we obviously want things done soon, so because otherwise we can't extend their contracts, and we don't have the money to extend their contracts, even if the sanctions would allow us to. And also claims each party has over being an appropriate steward of Chelsea, just like they claim to be a good owner. Is that true, what they're saying? That's basically what's going to come out of this, what they're going to assess. Obviously, just quickly before we get to the article by Pies, where have you sent that? You sent it on Twitter. Very good. Before we get to that, let's just quickly finish on obviously the other people that are part of this shortlist. Obviously, we mentioned Todd Boehly. We can go into more detail later if we require to. But just quickly for people that might not know that much about him, and he's certainly the one I know the least about. Sir, whatever he's a Martin Broughton. Pice, is there much to say? Is he the one that has the Bain Group backing, or is that a different guy? I'm mixing.
Bain is Stephen Pagliuca, and Sir Martin Broughton doesn't have much money. He's kind of teaming up with Josh Harris and David Blitzer, who have potential issues with Crystal Palace. So, yeah.
That is a bit weird because how quickly, so he has shares in Crystal Palace, just for people that are not aware of this. So just for the Premier League to even allow them to own us, he would need to sell those first. But for him to sell those, he will need to find a buyer. Obviously, it could be some of the other already pre-existing shareholders of Crystal Palace who could just split his shares up into their shares. But they then need to agree to that and pay him out, essentially. Or they need to find a different guy who's buying up all of his shares. So that just doesn't just happen from today to tomorrow. And I know some reports have suggested that Broughton could be one of the favourites. But the fact that this says here, speed and certainty of execution, if one of your guys is part of Crystal Palace, that says no to speed and that says no to guarantee or certainty. So that's why I think that's, again, rather unlikely. Would you agree with that, Pys?
Sorry, it was slightly liked a little bit for me.
I was just saying because they have a guy that owns part of Crystal Palace, the whole speed and certainty of execution just isn't given. That's why I think it's unlikely it's going to be them.
I don't understand that Sir Martin Broughton bid. Unless there's someone else involved, I don't really understand it because, like, how quickly can you give up, like, the
But even if there's not someone else involved, that would still be relevant, right?
Yeah, I mean, sure, well, because Lord Coe is as well. I keep forgetting about him, although he's not been mentioned a lot lately. But still, apparently, he's involved. And one of the, I think it was actually that Chris Bryan who was slating Abramovich all that time on Twitter. Pretty sure he said in government that, oh look, Lord Coe has a tie to Russian oligarchs, so that can't be allowed. So I don't really understand that bit and how that's made the shortlist, to be honest with you. But maybe we just don't know enough details. And same really with the Stephen Pagliuca guy, like 55% in Atlanta. That's not a small stake. Like, how quickly can you give that up? Negotiations and like, what? I just don't really understand that. That's why I keep saying Boehly, I think, is the favourite. There's just, there seems to be no problems with his party at all.
There you go. And like you mentioned there, Pagliuca, of course, obviously owns the Boston Celtics, who are a reasonably well-run basketball team, according to also Alex Goldberg, who has, of course, lived in Boston a lot of his life, so he would know, I would assume. Even though they aren't winning the series every year, it's not easy, especially when you have like goats flying about at other clubs. So it's a tough one. Let me just get this article because I'm going to highlight the whole article, so then it's easier to scroll through. But for some reason, it's not in my notifications. But here we are. Is it there? No. All right. Then I will just use Pys's pictures because that's what I have. I just will then try to zoom in so I can actually show them. Obviously, Pys, Charlie, Clutch, if you have thoughts that you have on any things that I've discussed now and you want to add something to it, please do. But I thought it's more kind of just discussing. No, that was the wrong thing I highlighted. I do apologize. It's more like facts anyway. So not really so much opinions. Hence why I was like, okay, it's enough. If we explain that. So let me open the right thing. Here I am. All right, so this is the article released by Matt Law. If I can zoom in a little bit and then I just scroll. Is this big enough? Let me just see. I mean, it's not big, but let me zoom in a little bit more. Pys, what's the headline of the article, if you know by any chance?
Let me double check. I think it was about Raine. I think basically they're earning extra money. For Raine to cash in on Chelsea sale as bidders told to commit additional $1 billion towards future investment into stadium and squad.
Okay, all right. So let's read the article. Chelsea's insistence that the winning bidders to buy the club must commit at least £1 billion towards future investment will push the fee collected by Raine. The bank in charge of the sale, even higher. Telegraph Sport understands that the Ricketts family, whose bid has been the subject of fans' backlash, have already made it clear that they can meet Chelsea's financial demands, but there may not be enough to win over supporters whose views will be taken into consideration before a buyer is picked, which is good news. Good news. Raine have confirmed that the lucrative commission for brokering the Chelsea takeover is tied to both the fee for the sale of the club and the money committed for investment into Stamford Bridge and the squad. Defending the handling of the sale, which has been privately criticised by a number of the bidders, Raine has also suggested that the shortlisted groups will get the chance to improve their offers before a winner is picked. Can I do that? No. Okay. I thought I can just skip to the next picture, but apparently I can't. So let's get that up. 4 groups led by Todd Boehly, Josh Harris, and Martin Broughton, the Ricketts family, and Stephen Pagliuca have received confirmation they have been shortlisted and have progressed to the next stage. That could lead to a four-way auction that pushes the bidding over £2.5 billion, and Chelsea won the binding commitment from groups. They put forward at least £1 billion more towards the renovation of Stamford Bridge and investment into the squad to keep the club competitive in the Premier League and Europe. The shortlisted groups will be given the opportunity to meet Chelsea chairman Bruce Buck, directors Eugene Tenenbaum and Marina Granovskaya, and head coach Thomas Tuchel to outline their financial commitment and vision for the club. The proceeds of the sale will go to good causes, which the sanctions placed on Roman Abramovich, meaning he cannot profit from the sale. But Raine has not commented on whether or not their commission, which is in line to run into the tens of millions, will go to charity. Now, well, sorry to fly in there, and because people are obviously making Raine now look like the bad guys. How many was this? Okay. What there needs to be said about this is these people are working to make this happen. So obviously their commission is not going to be donated, because if Charlie goes to work, he goes to work. He's not going to just donate, is he? Like, obviously make donations if you want to make donations. You know, it's a good thing to donate to the right charities, but they're not going to just donate all of what you make. Like, sure, Raine as a company can maybe do that, but they have God knows how many dozens of people working on this. So they're not just going to be like, oh, by the way, mate, you're not getting paid. Well, they will be. So obviously, people that work for things should be reimbursed for things. That's how things work. It's like our players aren't going to play for the club for free. Do you know what I mean? That's just what happens. But anyway, the successful bidder will not be decided on the sale price alone, and confirmation that the views of Chelsea fans will be taken into consideration leaves the Ricketts family facing an uphill battle. Like, hey, supporters were on Friday outraged that the Ricketts bid had been progressed despite a noted Ricketts social media campaign and concerns expressed by the club's supporters trust. The Ricketts family released a statement promising that they would try to reassure supporters that the bid is inclusive for supporters, and Chelsea and Raine will examine that relationship in greater detail during the final stage of the sale process. The shortlisted bidders will also make presentations to the government, who must greenlight the winning bid before issuing a new license for the sale of Chelsea to be completed, which it is anticipated could happen by the end of April, which is good, because let's not take it too long, because I really don't want this to affect potential summer dealings that we might have going on. One other thing I wanted to say, someone said that things are dodgy because Raine have only included Americans in the shortlist. Obviously, we don't know who the mystery bidder is. They could theoretically be from elsewhere, I suppose. But what I will say on this, I don't necessarily think that this is all things, there's a bias and, you know, this is all dodgy. Remember what was said a few weeks ago, and remember who our owner was, and why we are in the situation that we're in. The likelihood that Chelsea were going to go for a politically controversial owner was always very, very minimal after this, right? Sure, the Saudi media group were involved, even though in hindsight has been reported, oh, actually, they didn't have all the money that they claimed to have. Shocker, as probably goes for half of the things where it says they have so and so and so and so many billions in assets. Because it's assets. No one gives a shit. Unless you're willing to sell those assets and use that money for us, I don't really care. Do you know what I mean? With your assets, it's not really my problem. You know, you do you. So it was always likely that we'd go with some sort of American thing. And yeah, you can say not everyone that's not American is controversial. No, that's true. But America has a lot of rich people. And America has a lot of rich people that want to be involved in sports, because sure, there's a lot of rich people in Switzerland. There's rich people in, I don't know, Monaco, and probably in Germany and London. Now, would you want someone from London? No, I wouldn't. Because look what Barclays did to us. Like, obviously, it was understandable. They were trying to save their own ass. But if with this whole thing happening, I don't want anyone that could have ties to the government right now or a potential future government. Don't want none of that. Go away. Like, absolutely go away. I want this to be separate. I don't want Chelsea to become a PR agenda for political movements within England. That's outrageous. Don't want anything to do with that. And look at how football is run in the rest of Europe. None of the big owners and none of the big clubs are like owned, right? In Germany, they have the 51% rule, so that doesn't even exist in the first place. And obviously, the big owners in other places are also foreign owners, mostly from the Middle East, which is kind of viewed upon as controversial. Like, whether it's Newcastle, whether it's PSG, like all of these are viewed as somewhat controversial. Americans, they might have dodgy things in the past. They might have made companies got bankrupt. They might have done this wrong. They might have done that wrong. But it's a different level or scale of controversy. Obviously, to some extent, like the Ricketts, but otherwise, they're more usually squeaky clean. They might have done dodgy things, but you're not rich without doing dodgy things. Like let's not kid ourselves into things. But there's a difference in being involved in potentially funding a war. Not going to say whether that's necessarily what Roman did or not, or that's what the Saudis are doing. They're just doing it themselves. They're not funding it. That's controversial. Americans were always going to be less controversial, so always we're going to be more likely to get it. That's just it. Like, that's just a matter of fact. But let me get this super chat up here by Jester. What's he said? Roman cannot profit from the sale. Does that mean he can't get the original purchase price back from the sale? That would be a record sale for sports. Well, the original purchase price, wasn't it 100 million that he bought it for? Charlie, do you remember?
He bought it for 150 19 years ago. 150 mil.
Or was it 150? Well,
yeah, 150.
I don't like whether he gets that or not. Jester, number one, doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things how much the whole thing costs, and also to how much money Roman Abramovich has anyway. Obviously, a bit more difficult right now because a lot of his assets have been frozen that he had, in particular, all over Europe. But still, I don't think that will matter that much because, like I said, the original purchasing price wasn't actually that high. There's a couple of messages in the private chat. What was that saying? Martin Broughton was the chairman of Liverpool before FSG took over, apparently, for 10 months, yeah. Former chairman of British Airways. Well, I'm not sure that's a good or a bad thing. And necessarily, the Martin Broughton used to be chairman of Liverpool. If he isn't a Liverpool fan, does that matter? I guess it gives him experience, but how good he was, different discussion. I don't know how long he was before FSG, of course. FSG has been since 2009, someone said earlier. So the Champions League win in 2005 was probably with Broughton, but there's also a reason why until a year ago, they hadn't won a Premier League. So probably wasn't that good. But the question now is, where do we go from here? I'll take it back to Pys before I get Clutch and Charlie involved. I do apologize. Just Pys knows all the news things. So obviously I read somewhere that, or it was also said in here, by late April or middle of April. What kind of time frame do you now think Pys will be looking at? Is that going to be another like almost cut down of who's on the shortlist and we're going to cut it down from 5 to 3 or 2? Or is the next step going to be the decision?
Well, it said in the article that they'd be given an extra opportunity at some point to make another bid. So, I mean, that's interesting because that tells me that, yeah, obviously price is going to matter a lot. So I think they may get down to like a final 2 in like the next few weeks, and then I think they'll decide between the final 2, in my opinion. But like I don't know, like I'm not. It's hard to tell, but I think yeah, they could do that. Time scale is a hard one. I think. What is it now? We're at nearly the end of May, the end of March. So I think by the end of April, something could be fully agreed. And the fact that if it is going to be Todd Boehly, that he reckoned, obviously it's not going to happen now, that he could have had it done by next week now, which is the Brentford game all those weeks ago. That's what he reckoned. So I don't think the actual process of taking it into the government and getting it approved will take too long. Because as I said, like there's not really many. Well, there is political ties to some of them, which is why I keep thinking it will be Boehly because his party seems clean. So, yeah, I think probably, I think everything will be lined up and fine by the start of the summer window. I think that's going to be the plan. If it affects our summer window, then that's absolutely horrendous. That is just awful. It can't affect our summer window. There's got to be a new owner in charge by then. So then, things we can start signing some players and working with Tuchel. But yeah, it's hard to tell, Laurenz, because I mean, Raine have been slower than I thought so far. So who really knows, to be honest?
Very true. It is very true. Someone in the chat said Americans did a lot of bad things and they got away with it. Someone said American nuked Japan twice. Have you lot forgot? Okay. Now, number one, let's not talk about World War II. All right. It's a long time ago. Also, remember where I'm from. So let's not blame people from those countries for those things. Nothing to do with that. Right. So leave me alone. But
that's it. World War II.
America just works completely differently. Now, America don't hide how much money they put into their. I mean, Clutch and Jester in the chat will know about this much better than I do, but from my understanding, right, they don't hide how much money they spend, for example, on their military. I mean, they spend on it like trillions, not on a year, but billions a year. So when they do that, this is still dodgy when they bomb here and they bomb there. But this is less so, this is less any individuals that could buy Chelsea being involved in that. And even if they are, it's like different. And also what has to be highlighted, the word controversial has a certain relevancy in a certain direction. Like controversial is only relevant when it's controversial to the people that matter. Because Roman Abramovich was very controversial to the people in Palestine. But until yesterday, obviously not yesterday, but until a few months ago, or years ago, let's say, until he got his visa revoked, wasn't as controversial in the UK. They were perfectly happy for him to pump money into their economy. They were perfectly happy for him to, buy property and buy a football club and do this and do that. Do you know what I mean? Then it's fine. But that's just how the world works. It's the Western world against the rest. It shouldn't be, but unfortunately, that's just a matter of fact. And someone says 2003, Iraq. Yeah, of course they did those things, but that's America as a whole. That's their government, right? They decide those things. There's nothing to do with a Todd Boehly. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, they can support. Wasn't it the Ricketts that had support of Trump, or was it somebody else? 100%. But that support doesn't decide what then they decide to do in military actions, right? I'm not saying they have nothing to do with it, but it's just not viewed this way by the Western world. True or fair or not, unfortunately, that's how it goes. What can I do about that, Clutch? If you want to jump in there, if maybe you just know better than I do.
I think people in the chat need to type in American hegemony, and then you start to understand why America gets away with a lot of things that they get away with. Right or wrong, because most of it's wrong. But if you type that in, you'll understand why America does the things they do, and people don't say anything about it. It's just the unfortunate truth of the world right now.
But would you say it's individuals that are trying to buy Chelsea or could be trying to buy Chelsea that are involved with this?
No. I mean, lobbying is a thing that happens, and rich people technically run America, whether we like it or not. But that's a discussion for a totally different thing. Are the people that are currently, right now for us, involved? We don't know. We have zero clue. There's nothing to prove that. So there is no, like you said, there's no proof that any of these individuals have ever done anything that has caused any of the problems of the world.
There you go. Luis Garcia saying here, Raine shortlisted racists. They did, reportedly, but rejected Saudis of pure stigmas. Well, it was also said that the Saudis actually turned out to not have enough money. So not just stigmas. But again, whether it's completely wrong, and I 1,000,000% agree with it that the Ricketts shouldn't be here. But if you paid a little bit of attention of what happened over the last few months, weeks, whatever, you always knew it was most likely going to be Americans. That's just what it is. It was always going to be that. They were never going to pick a Saudi one because that's, again, controversial. All of us would have been happy if they came in with trillions. Do you know what I mean? Or not all of us, but some of us would have been happy just for that fact, right? That, okay, everyone's laughing at us because Roman had to sell and now we could, shove it all in their faces and just buy everyone. Of course. But it was just never going to be that way. Chelsea were never going to take that risk to be viewed as controversial again and have a similar scenario happen where we're stripped of everything in another 2, 3, 4 years. God knows how long. And that's just a lot less likely with American owners. Sorry, but that's just a fact. Charlie, in terms of owners, the fact that it's, not that they're only from America, is that something that bothers you? Is that something you expected? Seemingly some people are bothered by it. I wouldn't say I'm bothered. It's more like, first of all, what I always say, and I said this in the chat with you guys a couple of times, I can't control it anyway. I say that, obviously, the no to Ricketts seems to have some sort of influence. I mean, Matt Law, in this very article that we read through a minute ago, highlighted that fans' opinion will be valued in the final decision. But other than for reasons like that, we won't have a final say whether it's Todd Boehly or, Stephen Donny or Broughton. We just won't necessarily have a final say. No, Varna, it's not an opinion. It's just it's just reading the room. The Chelsea were never going to do it. I'm not saying that they do it and they should have done it, but I'm saying it was always going to happen this way. I mean, Charlie, obviously, if you don't want to elaborate on that topic, fine. But do you agree? Do you disagree?
What, on if it should be an American owner or not?
Yeah, there was always going to probably end up being one.
I think if you actually step back and look at it logically, the fact that the club didn't want to go with a politically, difficult owner. So that does rule out the Gulf states, Saudi. There's not very many wealthy British businessmen. Obviously, you had that Jim Ratcliffe that owns Nice, I think. He was initially a little bit in the running, potentially. Nick Candy. And then, there was no wealthy Europeans linked with the club at all. So what does that leave you?
Well, I guess, and the one that is arguably the favourite in this Swiss Donny Hans-Jürgen.
Yeah, so. and it leaves you with Americans. And I think, people feel, I guess, I'll probably include myself in this. You think, oh no, because you automatically look at it as the Glazers are shit, the Cronkies are shit owners, and then you basically, by association, you then tarnish all other potential American owners as shit because your closest experience is United and Arsenal in the same league. Whereas in reality, yes, there's going to be some terrible American owners, and there'll be some very good ones, and there are good American owners in sports. Of course there are, but I guess there's always a worry because of when you see Americans that own other sporting entities and then come to buy a Premier League team. You look at the difference between the Cronkies and their LA Rams compared to Cronkies. If Arsenal got to a Champions League final, Cronkies wouldn't go, but Super Bowl, they're all over it and they're loving it. So I think you just at the end of the day, for me, mate, I don't care where these people are from. As long as they've got the club's best interests at heart, they want to keep winning and they want to take us forward. They could be from wherever they want to be from, as far as I'm concerned. And it really doesn't matter. I think, people just get so caught up in things. They're trying to find the perfect owner. Perfect owner doesn't exist. If you do digging on anyone in any position of power, you'll find stuff that's dodgy about them. You don't amass this amount of wealth without being exploitative in one way or another. So yeah, for me, it's going to be an American most likely. Does it matter? No. Is it a problem? Could be. But yeah, so that there, 700. Yeah, so it's got the most billionaires in the world. Then by a pure numbers game, chances are it's probably going to be an American. And only time will tell if that's a good or a bad thing or not. But yeah, I mean, I said I'm really not fussed, to be honest. As long as it's the right person for the job, they can be from anywhere.
The only thing I was slightly surprised by, I guess, obviously the Korean company was involved with Nick Handy, but I was surprised that there wasn't more potentially Chinese interest or any sort of Asian interest, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. But hey, it is what it is. One thing I will say with you, Luis Garcia, I will actually agree on this. Yes, that is pure hypocrisy. But what I was talking about is who actually gets it in the end, rather than the whole shortlist thing. To me, is a complete debacle anyway. But in the grand scheme of things, once everything's done, who was or was not on the shortlist doesn't matter. What matters is who gets it, and that's either going to be good or bad, or in between, I suppose. But in terms of what we think right now, it's going to be Boehly or one of the other ones, essentially, or we find out who the mystery bidder is. But I agree with you, actually, Luis Garcia. That is hypocrisy, and that shouldn't quite be the case. I do agree. Boys, is there anything else, Pies? Let me go through. Is there anything else that we do need to discuss that we haven't discussed yet, which we should do?
I think so.
There you go. Clutch, any thoughts you would like to share before I think of one last question to put to all of you guys?
Not really. I just hopefully this gets done quicker and the future can be a little bit more stable than it is now. Preferably done before May, but it's not looking great on that front. But I'd like fans to be able to go to the games again in full capacity.
That's one thing. We haven't discussed this on this channel yet. Now, obviously, Chelsea a few days ago were now the special license that are granted by the UK government, of course, to operate, even though we are officially a frozen asset of Roman Abramovich. We are now allowed to sell tickets, but not home tickets to members. What? So we can sell home tickets to members and season ticket holders for Champions League games. Obviously, we don't have home games in the FA Cup anymore because it's only semi-final and a potential final left, and those are both held at Wembley. But regardless, so we're allowed to sell tickets normal for Champions League home games. We're allowed to sell them for Champions League away games, Premier League away games, and FA Cup games. But we're not allowed to sell extra tickets for home games. But we are allowed to sell away tickets for Premier League games. Don't understand. I would expect by the time we actually played a Premier League home game, maybe they'll hit us with one just to piss us off because they hate us. But after that, they'll probably allow us to sell those tickets as well, even if the sale isn't quite done yet. But it is obviously ridiculous. Like, come on. You're trying to sanction Roman Abramovich. None of this money is supposedly going to Roman Abramovich anyway. The whole thing is, none of the money can go to him. All right. So if we can sell away games in the Premier League and the Champions League, we can sell home games in the Champions League, and we can sell FA Cup tickets, then clearly you have found a way how we can sell things without the money going to Roman Abramovich. Meaning there is literally no reason whatsoever at all for us not to be allowed to sell tickets to members and potential general sale as well, because you already found a way to sell tickets without the revenue of that going to Roman Abramovich. So there is zero logic in that whatsoever. Obviously, if any of you wants to jump in there, please do. But lastly, it's just what I discussed with what Pi said a minute ago. We just hope that it doesn't take too long. We just hope that it gets done quickly. This whole process of shortlisting took longer than we expected. Like I said in the beginning of the stream, it was initially said that it was going to happen literally 8 days ago, and it happened 1 day ago. So like it took 7 days longer than it was initially supposed to. The shortlist also is bigger than it was initially reported to be. It was always said between 2, 3, or 4. Now it's all of a sudden apparently 5, if you are to believe the BBC, of course. So who knows? But I just hope it gets done. I hope it's not the Ricketts, essentially. I probably hope it's Boehly. I hope he stays true by his word. And Pice, am I right in saying that the Spurs fan that is, or was it Boehly? No, it was Boehly. Obviously, Boehly in the past had already interest in buying Chelsea. Maybe people don't actually know about this. And at the time, he was already looking at how to redevelop Stamford Bridge, but in the same spot. Am I right in saying that?
Not too sure on the stadium issue, but he submitted a official bid of 2.2 billion in 2019, and that was reported worldwide. And obviously, Roman rejected because just didn't want to sell Chelsea. So, yeah, he has had previous interest, and not just interest. He officially submitted a bid.
Okay, I read that somewhere. I can't confirm the truth of it. I do apologize. Didn't remember where I read it or when I read it, but I read it. That. I'm not sure whether it was Boehly himself or the Spurs fan that's part of his consortium that are looking at redeveloping in the same spot. Now, that's already a positive to me. Like, I want Stamford Bridge. I understand why they need to make it bigger. I totally understand. I also get why some fans don't want that, but you also, like, you need to go with the times. If we're one of the big clubs, we can't forever run around with a 40,000 seat stadium, especially, you know, since we we don't even sell 40,000 anymore because of the few rows that they leave gaps between away fans, and now the safe standing has for some reason means less seats, which that's safe standing all over the world. That's the opposite. Usually in safe, like for example, the Allianz Arena of Bayern Munich. In the Bundesliga, because there's different rules. In the Bundesliga, you're allowed to stand in stadiums, while in the Champions League, you're not. So in the Champions League, they're only allowed to sell per seat. So that's why their capacity in the Champions League, as far as I'm aware, is 66,000. While in the Bundesliga games, because then they're fully standing, is a fully standing stand, tribune, whatever you want to call it, they actually have a capacity of 75,000. So it actually is a difference of nearly 10,000 people, how many people they're allowed to let in when it's a Champions League game or when it's a Bundesliga game. So that's why I understand even less why now we have safe standing, we have less than 40,000 people, because now it's kind of capped at 39,000 and a bit. But anyway, so I understand that we need to do that one day. I don't want us to move. Sure, Battersea Park is reasonably close, I guess. But ideally, you'd stay in the same spot. So if anyone finds a way how to do that, obviously like Roman Abramovich's plan in 2015, great. If you can afford to make a plan happen that does that, I think we'd all probably be reasonably happy with that, because I think all of us probably understand that we're not going to have this stadium forever. And if the situation at Fulham Broadway just doesn't really allow an expansion without building a whole new thing, then that's just what it is. Do you know what I mean? It is just what it is. Let me highlight this super chat by Rodrigo. Appreciate you very much, mate. Saying China is unwinding its investments in the West, so no Chinese billionaire. I'm against government seizing private property. Is scary president. It is a scary president. That is very sure, very true. And yeah, it's a fair shout with China unwinding its investments. Well, I mean, Leicester have an Indonesia. Is he from Indonesia? Am I right in saying that their owners?
No, they're from Thailand.
Thailand. Okay. I was going to say close enough, but that might sound dodgy. So just a different country. But they're investing big money, not necessarily in terms of player sales, but obviously they're player purchases. But they're obviously starting at a very different scale, right? So they built like a huge training center for them. Looks phenomenal, to be fair.
Yeah.
So like they obviously have to start at a very different spot compared to where we are at right now. But you know, there could have been someone from Thailand, India, God knows. Although India doesn't denounce Russia as much as the West, so that would probably also in itself immediately be viewed as controversial. So we'd probably already knock over that, I guess. But who knows, really? But yeah, is that really all we can say towards the end of it? Been to Thailand, lovely place. There you go, Pys. I have not, unfortunately, but here we are. Charlie, that's all we can really hope for, that it gets done as quickly as possible and that it's Boehly, or that the mystery bidder is some great guy who we want, I guess.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, as Pys said earlier, I think the most important thing is that this is done before the summer transfer window, before the end of the season, so that it doesn't affect what business we do in the summer, because that would be unforgivable, and it would mean we'd be starting next season on the back foot or at a disadvantage. So yeah, for me, you know, I mean, things are saying, it could be done by the end of April. It could be. You'd like to think now that we're sort of getting to more advanced stages that the process might speed up a little bit. But you just never know. I mean, Raine haven't handled it that well, as we've discussed. So who knows what's going to happen? They might announce some more bidders have been added on or whatnot. Who knows? But yeah, most important thing is that it's done before the end of the season. It doesn't affect the summer plans going forward into next season. And other than that, I think that's all we can hope for, really.
Charlie, remind me, were you on that stream where we discussed the situation around Stamford Bridge, or were you not on that stream?
What about expanding it?
Expanding it, moving, what we think about the whole thing. Were you on that?
Oh, I can't remember.
So in that case, then I would ask you, because I see this chat message by USA CFC saying my college stadium seats 110,000 people for American football games. The bridge seating about a third of that is leaving a lot of money on the table. New owners will be very aware of this. Now, yes, but please come to London. I mean, maybe you have, but please come to London. And then you will immediately know why that isn't the thing in London, because that space that you have in the US, especially in these random cities with mostly college football, there's just no space to build stadiums like this. Also, could be wrong, but I feel like the laws that you have to apply by to build stadiums like this are much stricter in Europe, because otherwise, why wouldn't we have more of this? It's not like the people wouldn't turn up like they would in America. That wouldn't make any sense. So maybe it's just less easy to buy big constructions like that. I don't know. Although you see more tribunes collapsing in Europe than you do in America, to be fair. So maybe I'm waffling in that sense. But anyway, in London, there is just not that space to build a 110,000 stadium. I mean, they probably could have done with the Olympic Stadium, because obviously around Stratford there is space. And they obviously redeveloped the whole thing for the Olympics anyway. But even then, they limited it at 60,000. So that isn't really that much of a UK thing. You can't necessarily just directly compare it to the US. But Charlie, your thoughts on the whole Stamford Bridge? Like, is it very important to you that it stays in the same spot? Is it very important to you potentially that it stays the same thing, but only, like, in your idea, it's mostly like only a redevelopment or rather a renovation? Or would you not even care if we moved it as long as it's not too far?
Well, first of all, I think it could be almost impossible to move it because of the Chelsea pitch owners. I think to actually move the site is going to be virtually impossible.
Near on impossible, yeah.
Near on impossible. I mean, not saying impossible, but as close to as you can get. In terms of the redevelopment, I think that it's a must. You know, I think I've said this to you before, mate. Like, Chelsea's a massive football club, but then you look at our stadium, and the stadium doesn't move the size of the club. And I think when I was chatting to you on my channel, like, we brought up that brochure thing, and like, if you expanded it, the ground, if it went up to 60,000, the revenue would go from I think it was going to go from 70 million to 200 million by expanding the 20 extra thousand seats in it. So I think for me, whether it's a redevelopment, whether it's an expansion, whatever you want to call it, it has to happen. You know, it's been talked about for years and years now, and you know, football's moving forward, times move forward. Everyone loves Stamford Bridge. It's in a great location. It's a unique stadium, but you've got to move the times. So we do need to expand it. You've got the fan base to do it. And ultimately, you know, money talks, and it's a money game, you know, business. So, and it is a business at the end of the day. I know it's a sports team as well, but you know, people are in it for business perspective as well. So yeah, I'm not against. I'm dead against moving it. I don't think we should move it. As I said, I think it'd be virtually impossible to move it anyway. But expanding it has got to be something near the top of priorities for the next owner.
It is. Although when you look at the energy prices of everything right now, even if a new owner comes in, a new stadium isn't being built anytime soon because the global situation right now it makes everything so stupendously expensive that no one's going to do that. Like even for $1 billion, you're probably barely going to tear Stamford Bridge down for $1 billion. Obviously, with the West Stand or the main building of the West Stand being like a listed building, a listed property that you're not allowed to tear down, which is what was the whole plan in 2015. That it would have taken us a year to even take down Stamford Bridge as far to build it back up as the new thing, because we can't just come in with the wrecking ball and, you know, hack the whole shit down, because we need to leave the main building of the West Stand because it's a listed building. So we can tear down the Shed End and the Matthew Arden and the East Stand, but we can't do that with the building of the West Stand. So we need to like move around it. So I mean, Global says move from Stamford Bridge if it can't be expanded. Like Charlie said, though, it's just not going to happen. Chelsea pitch owners are probably not going to make that happen.
Too difficult.
It is. Although I will also say one thing, because I said it on my stream that very same day after I was on your stream, Charlie. Obviously, that 130 million revenue extra per year is great, but that only becomes relevant after you've taken in enough money that it costs to build a stadium. Because obviously, look at Arsenal. So you spend say 1 billion on the new stadium, then it takes you like 8 years nearly to have made all the money back for you to make profit, because until then you're just kind of paying back what you paid. But also, obviously, in the same spot, 60k is definitely the max. But if we're talking about moving anyway, then why leave it at 60? Why not go to 80? Because if 17,000 or 20,000 new seats gives you an extra revenue of 130 million, how many more is another 20,000 going to be? Sure, then you could argue maybe we won't then be sold out at every game. Could theoretically be. Although I think, as much as Chelsea fans don't like that, with tourists, we'll probably always get there. But maybe not always, depending on some shitty FA Cup games. So maybe the drastic increase of revenue wouldn't be as crazy from 60 to 80,000 anymore as it is from 40 to 60, but it would still be a revenue increase. So if you're going to go for it, surely the stadium doesn't get that much more expensive whether you build a 60,000 seat stadium or 80,000 seat stadium. But hey, it's your own. Obviously, I've discussed the stadium topic with Clutch and Pice before, so I'm not going to get you back into it. But Pice, any last thoughts? Like, what you're hoping for, but what's really like your ideal, what comes next, I guess?
Really, just Todd Boehly for me. I mean, his consortium, I think, he's done a smart thing by hiring a London-based property developer as well, even though he's a Spurs fan, supposedly. But I keep thinking, you know, he could just be one of those plastic Spurs fans, but supposedly he is a lifelong.
I do Spurs are plastic
committed.
fans because they never win anything.
I know, but like, you know, like he could just be one of those who just had some connection to Spurs, and then, you know, like, not all football fans are that serious.
You know,
but
like you're an expert with Chelsea, right?
yeah, I don't know. I don't know why you would support Spurs. They're shit, but yeah, I think he's done a smart thing by obviously getting the Daniel Finkelstein, who's worked with data, and I think he's done a smart thing by getting a London-based property developer. As you guys said there, the stadium, I agree. I don't think it will be done for a while anyway. It's not easy. There's a lot of things, a lot of planning to go into it. So yeah, I think I'm hoping for Todd Boehly because I'm just so scared by the others. I'm scared by everyone really because it's still the element of the unknown at the end of the day. But you know, we've not known anything different, so it is scary in a sense. But yeah, just hope for the best, and hopefully, you know, the club and Raine make the right decision, I guess.
There you go. One last question I quickly have for you, Python. I don't know if you know the answer to this. Obviously, it is public knowledge that John Terry is trying to, along with fans, trying to acquire 10% ownership of the club. Is he already trying to do that, or will he like basically ask whoever the new owner ends up being, can I buy 10%?
No, I think it is with the new owner. I'm pretty sure. Like,
so like once the new owner is decided, then he will try to make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Fair dues. Just because Jez Ball no idea what that name is supposed to stand for. But anyway, so why don't Chelsea acquire some percentage of ownership? Now, number one, you don't just rock up and do that. As you can see, even bloody billionaires are struggling to get that done. Looking at Saudi media group, so you don't just rock up as Chelsea fans and like, by the way, we want to buy some. Like, also, someone needs to fucking organize that. And you know how many billions need to turn up? Yeah, there's a lot of Chelsea fans, but how do you contact every single one of them? And even if you manage to contact all of them, how will you guarantee that all of them will transfer your money? Also, where will all the money go that we would be spending on international money transfers? And like, you need to think about things. Not that simple. But anyway, Clutch, finish it off for us. Any last thoughts? Is it just Boehly or bust almost, like Jester, I think, said earlier in the chat?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we got to hope for at the moment. He at least seems like he's passionate, and track record says that he's been involved in successful clubs, especially here in America. I take that with a grain of salt because sports.
Such a weird word. Who came up with calling a sports team a franchise? I don't understand. But anyway,
people who love money. But yeah,
if it was a franchise, then you could say, "Oh, it goes back to the French." But it's a franchise. So what does that do? Sorry, go.
Yeah, but it's just Todd Boehly for me. I think that's the best of the best that we're going to get, unless that fifth is all of a sudden, what's the guy's name that everybody wants? Steve Ballmer? Is that his name? Yeah, that's his name.
That is his
None
name.
of it would be true, by the way. Like, Matt Law's not confirmed this mystery bidder. Like, no one else has really confirmed it apart from BBC Sport, which is weird.
Exactly, that is weird. Like, when has that ever happened that the BBC are the only place to say something?
Like, how have you got an inside scoop, but club correspondents haven't? Like, how does that make sense? Maybe they'll get it soon. I don't know. It's a weird one. I don't necessarily think I believe
Maybe
it.
it's Nigel Farage himself. You never know. Boris Johnson.
Oh, good lord.
Is Boris Johnson a fan of anyone, and is the public aware of who he supports?
Well, I swear there was a picture of him years ago with a Chelsea flag. If you look online,
I hope not.
No, bro, there is. I swear to you, I've seen it before.
Like, did you see that clip from Parliament the other day when this one Donny was speaking about serious shit, and he's just sat in the background giggling away? I'm like, excuse me, like, I didn't know certain produce was allowed to be smoked inside Parliament. Like, why is he giggling away? Like, what's going on? But sorry, Clutch, we interrupted you there. Is there anything else?
No, you're fine. So that's basically all I had to say is Boehly or bust.
Boehly or bust. There you go. I mean, there's a good chance we'll have to do another update stream on this whole topic in the next few days. Of course, Chelsea will only be back next week. And does anyone yet know? Do we play next Saturday, Sunday?
It's the 2nd of April, whatever that is. Is that Saturday?
It is the Saturday, yeah.
We play Brentford, so it would always be a Saturday game,
yeah.
Yeah. All right, so Saturday against Brentford. So the latest I'll see you next is on Friday, but I will really try to get streaming before whatever the topic may be. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, if you're still here, I appreciate you very much. Subscribe if you haven't already. Means the world. We're on the road to 15,000 subscribers. Every new subscriber counts, so hit that big red subscribe button for me. Like Toboga keeps going on about, and I love him for it. Smash the like button. We're 19 away from 100 likes. There's still 140 people watching, so go down below, smash the like button for me, and let's get to 100 likes. Come on, let's do it. I mean, just on your way out, click that like button. If you don't have a Google account, make one. It's 2022. Have a Google account. Do you know what I mean? Subscribe to Charlie's channel. Link is down in the description. The Blues Brothers, and I'm on there sometimes. So what reason do you have to not subscribe? So go down below. Help him reach 400 subscribers. Check out Pys's and Clutch's Twitter, and check out Pys's website as well. Chelsea 365. Big shout out to all of my 3 guests for coming on. Big shout out to everyone that has tuned in. Thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea. Upwards and onwards. Boehly or bust, as they say. And we'll see you next time. Oh yeah, and no to Ricketts.